You know that sinking feeling when you check your bank account and realize the rules changed overnight, but nobody told you? Maybe it was a surprise fee, a sudden policy shift, or watching your savings lose value, while someone somewhere is getting rich off the same system. That exact feeling is happening right now in the Bitcoin market. Except this time the stakes are bigger, and the players manipulating the game are the same institutions we've been told to trust with our money. I am Bob, and I've spent years studying personal finance and how big institutions operate behind the scenes. I've become obsessed with uncovering the tricks that keep ordinary people stuck while others profit. If you are interested in learning how money really works and how to protect yourself from these games, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. I share these insights because I believe everyone deserves to understand the system before the system takes advantage of them. Here is what is happening right now. Banks discovered something called synthetic exposure, and it is allowing them to control Bitcoin prices without actually owning Bitcoin. Think of it like this. Imagine someone selling tickets to a concert they don't own, collecting money from thousands of people, but never actually buying the venue or hiring the band. They profit from the ticket sales, control how many people think they're going to the concert, and can even influence what people believe the concert is worth. That is essentially what major banks are doing with Bitcoin through futures contracts, options, and paper Bitcoin products. They're creating artificial supply and demand, moving prices up and down, while regular investors like you and me react to those movements thinking we're seeing real market forces at work. This matters to you even if you've never touched cryptocurrency, because this same playbook has been used for decades in gold, silver, oil, and even mortgage-backed securities. Remember 2008? That crisis happened partly because banks created synthetic products based on mortgages, lost touch with reality, and everyday people paid the price. The concept here is simple but powerful. When financial institutions can create unlimited paper versions of an asset, they gain the power to manipulate its perceived value. And that manipulation affects real people making real financial decisions. Let me show you how this plays out in everyday situations. Sarah is a 32-year-old marketing manager who decided to invest $5,000 in Bitcoin last year as part of her long-term savings strategy. She watched the price climb to $65,000 per Bitcoin, then suddenly crash to $30,000, then bounce back up. What Sarah didn't know was that during those wild swings, major banks were selling Bitcoin futures contracts. They didn't have the Bitcoin to back up. When prices got too high, they flooded the market with sell orders on paper Bitcoin, driving prices down. Sarah panicked during the crash and sold at a loss. The bank that created those paper contracts? They profited from both the way down and the way back up, never owning a single actual Bitcoin. Sarah lost $1,500 of her hard-earned savings. The bank made millions. Compare that to Michael, who works in construction and kept his savings in a traditional bank account, earning 0.5% interest. He watched Bitcoin's volatility and decided it was too risky, thinking his bank account was the safe choice. But here is the twist. While Michael's money sat earning essentially nothing, inflation ran at 6% that year. His $10,000 in savings lost $600 in purchasing power. Meanwhile, the same bank holding his money was using it to trade Bitcoin derivatives, making substantial profits from the volatility Michael was afraid of. The bank earned returns of 15 to 20% on activities funded partly by Michael's deposits, while paying him 0.5%. Michael thought he was being cautious. The system was designed to profit from his caution. Now look at Jennifer, a 45-year-old teacher who spent 3 years carefully researching Bitcoin and decided to buy and hold actual Bitcoin in a secure wallet. Not through a bank product, she bought at $40,000 per Bitcoin. When prices dropped to $30,000, she didn't panic because she understood the difference between paper Bitcoin manipulation and actual Bitcoin scarcity. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence. No bank can print more. Jennifer held through the volatility, and when prices recovered to $55,000, she was up 37.5%. More importantly, she owned real Bitcoin that no institution could lend out, create derivatives from, or use to manipulate markets. The data shows that investors who hold actual Bitcoin for periods longer than 4 years have historically had a 100% success rate in seeing positive returns, despite all the manufactured volatility. Here is another angle that hits closer to home. Banks are now offering Bitcoin ETFs and Bitcoin investment products to regular customers. Sounds convenient, right? You get Bitcoin exposure without the hassle of wallets and security. But here is what they don't tell you. When you buy these products, the bank often doesn't buy actual Bitcoin to back your investment. They use something called fractional reserve practices, the same system they use with regular money. For every $100 of Bitcoin products they sell, they might only hold $30 of actual Bitcoin. The rest is just accounting entries. This means they can sell the same Bitcoin to multiple customers, collect fees from all of them, and use the leverage to manipulate prices. When you try to cash out, you get dollars based on whatever price they decide to show you at that moment. You never actually owned Bitcoin. You owned a promise from a bank. And we've seen throughout history how reliable those promises are when things go wrong. The numbers tell a striking story. In 2023, the total value of Bitcoin derivatives traded on major exchanges exceeded $1 trillion. While the entire market cap of actual Bitcoin was around $600 billion, that means more than 3 times the value of all Bitcoin in existence was being traded in paper form. This creates a massive disconnect between real supply and perceived supply. When banks can create unlimited paper Bitcoin, they can temporarily suppress prices regardless of actual demand for real Bitcoin. A study from the University of Sussex found that on days when major futures contracts expired, Bitcoin prices showed unusual downward pressure 78% of the time, recovering within a week after expiration. That is not natural market behavior. That is manipulation with a pattern. I know what you are thinking right now. First objection. Bob, I don't have money to invest in Bitcoin anyway, so why does this matter to me? Fair question. Here is why it matters even if you never buy Bitcoin. This manipulation proves that major financial institutions are operating with tools and strategies that give them unfair advantages over regular people in every market. Not just crypto. They're doing similar things with stocks, bonds, commodities, and even the interest rates on your savings account. Understanding how they manipulate one market helps you see the patterns everywhere else. It is not about Bitcoin specifically. It is about recognizing when you are being played so you can make smarter decisions with whatever money you do have, whether that is $50 or $50,000. Second objection. This sounds too complex and risky. Shouldn't I just stay away from all of it and keep my money in the bank? I get it. Complexity is scary, and banks count on that fear. But here is the reality. Keeping all your money in a traditional bank while inflation runs at 5 to 7% and your savings earn less than 1% is also a risk. It is a guaranteed loss of purchasing power. You are not avoiding risk by staying in the traditional system. You are just choosing a different kind of risk. One where you slowly lose ground year after year while banks use your deposits to make profits you'll never see. The goal isn't to go all in on Bitcoin or any single asset. The goal is to understand how the game works so you can diversify smartly. And stop letting institutions profit from your lack of knowledge. So what can you actually do about this right now? Let me give you concrete steps that work regardless of your current financial situation. First, educate yourself on the difference between owning real assets and owning paper promises. This applies to everything, not just Bitcoin. When you invest in anything through a bank product, ask explicitly, do I own the actual asset, or do I own a derivative or certificate? If it is the latter, understand that you are exposed to both the asset's volatility and the institution's reliability. Real ownership means you can take possession. Paper ownership means you are trusting someone else's balance sheet. Second, diversify beyond traditional banks. You don't need thousands of dollars to start. Open accounts with credit unions, which operate differently from major banks and often offer better terms because they're member-owned. Look into treasury bonds. You can buy directly from the government through Treasury Direct, cutting out bank middlemen. Even keeping 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account at an online bank that pays 4 to 5% instead of 5% makes a real difference. If you have $1,000 earning 0.5%, That is $5 a year at 4.5%. That is $45. Over 10 years with regular contributions, that difference compounds to thousands of dollars. Third, if you are interested in Bitcoin or other alternative assets, start by learning before buying. Spend 1 month reading about how blockchain works, what gives Bitcoin value, and most importantly, how to safely store it yourself. There are free resources everywhere. When you do buy, start small with money you can afford to lose while you learn. Buy actual Bitcoin through a reputable exchange. Then transfer it to a wallet you control. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin, as the saying goes. This principle applies broadly. If you don't control the asset, you are at someone else's mercy. Fourth, track where your money actually goes and what it actually earns. Most people don't realize they're losing money because they never calculate real returns after fees and inflation. Take 30 minutes this week to list every account you have, what it is earning, what fees you are paying, and what inflation is doing to that money. The average American pays over $300 a year in banking fees alone. That is $300 going straight to institutions that are already using your deposits to make profits. Many of those fees are avoidable with better account choices. Fifth, question financial products that seem too convenient. When a bank offers you a new investment product, ask yourself, why are they offering this to me? What are they making from this? If you can't clearly identify how they profit, be cautious. Banks don't offer products out of generosity. They offer products that make them money. Sometimes those products also benefit you, but often the benefit is asymmetric. They make a lot, you make a little, and you take most of the risk. Read the fine print. Understand the fee structure. Know what you are actually buying. Look, I am not telling you to become a financial expert overnight or to pull all your money out of banks tomorrow. What I am telling you is that the system is designed to keep you in the dark while others profit from your uncertainty. The Bitcoin price manipulation is just one visible example of a much larger pattern. Banks have been playing these games for decades because they work. They work because most people don't understand what is happening until it is too late. But here is the empowering part. You don't need to beat the banks at their own game. You just need to stop playing by their rules. You do that by understanding the basics of how money works, owning real assets when possible, diversifying beyond traditional institutions, and making informed decisions instead of convenient ones. Every small step you take to understand and control your own finances is a step toward actual financial freedom. The difference between someone who struggles financially their entire life and someone who builds real wealth often isn't income. It is knowledge and action. Two people can make the same salary, but one understands how to make their money work for them while the other lets institutions extract value at every turn. That gap compounds over decades into completely different life outcomes. You've made it this far in this video, which means you are already ahead of most people. You are asking questions. You are looking for answers. That curiosity is your most valuable financial asset. Don't let complexity scare you back into ignorance. The system counts on your confusion. If this opened your eyes to something you didn't know before, do me a favor. Hit that like button so more people can see this information. Subscribe to this channel because I am going to keep uncovering these patterns and sharing practical ways to protect yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe a friend who is frustrated with their finances or a family member who has been burned by the system. The banks found their loophole. Now you know it exists. What you do with that knowledge is up to you, but I promise you this. Awareness is the first step to change, and action is how you make that change real. You've got this. Let's build something better together.